Hello, friends and neighbors and those who love the Lord. Again, this is Tim Daniels, and we really appreciate you taking this time to be with us that we call our moment with the Master. You know, one of the most heartfelt and heartwarming stories, true stories in the Bible, is the story of Naomi and Ruth. And you know the story. Naomi was in Bethlehem, and she was Jewish. She loved the Lord, and she had a husband and two sons. And there was a famine, and she had to leave and go to Moab, another place, in order to get food and to survive. And when she moved there, her two sons married, and one of her sons married a young Moabite woman named Ruth. But unfortunately, tragedy happened. And that's what happens in life. Life is full of trouble and storms and tragedy. And while there, Naomi lost her husband and then, unfortunately, both of her sons. And then, of course, she broken, destitute, grieving, she went back to Bethlehem, which ironically means house of bread. And her daughter-in-law Ruth, instead of staying in Moab and getting married again, she decided to tell her mother-in-law, Naomi, I'm going to stay with you. I will not let you grieve alone. I will be with you as we walk through this. And of course, you know the story. They went back to Bethlehem, and being destitute, they got a job working in the field. Ruth did, and the boss was a man by the name of Boaz. And Boaz fell in love with Ruth, and they got married. But then God did something else. God caused Naomi to find out that Boaz was a relative. And as a relative, Boaz, he was rich, and what he did, he paid off all of Naomi's debt. And Naomi received her inheritance back after he married Ruth. There are just a couple of thoughts from this story. It's a beautiful story I would like to leave for you. And one is this: when storms happen, God may not always give you an answer, but he will always give you an anchor. He may not give you an answer, but he will always give you an anchor. When a ship is in the waters in the midst of a storm, an anchor holds it down, keeps it from being torn apart and blown away. And God gave Naomi an anchor called Ruth. Let me ask you a question. Who was your anchor in the midst of your storm? When you went through your storm, who was your anchor? Your spouse, your mother, your father, a close friend, a close church member, your one of your children, your mom. Who was your anchor? He will always give you an anchor. Number two, whatever you put in upstream, God will bless you with it downstream. Whatever you put in upstream, it'll bless you downstream. What do you mean by that, preacher? Ruth gave strength and encouragement and a blessing to Naomi in Moab, upstream. And then several years later, God blessed Ruth with a wonderful, wealthy man of God who loved her deeply downstream. Whatever you put in upstream, that's why we have to be careful how we treat people. Because whatever you put in upstream, it's going to come back to you downstream, because you may have to drink of that same stream. Thirdly, we learn in this story that healing comes from helping. When Naomi was grieving at the loss of her husband and both her sons, so she had buried every male in her family, Ruth was also grieving, because Ruth was also a widow, because she had married one of Naomi's sons. But Ruth decided, even in her grief, that she's going to heal and be there for her mother-in-law. And because Ruth helped to heal her mother-in-law by walking with her and being there with her, then God healed her. When you heal others, God will heal you. When you bless others, God will bless you. And so healing comes from helping. When you help other folk, God will help you as you go through your storm. And then, lastly, God can turn a troubled past into a triumphant future. God can turn a troubled past into a triumphant future. You know, Ruth and Boaz had a son, and that son's name was Obed. Obed had a son, and his name was Jesse. Jesse had a son, and his name was David. And David had a great, 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 great granddaughter, and her name was Mary. And Mary had a son named Jesus. Out of all of this tragedy, out of all of this devastation, a troubled past led to a triumphant future that has been a blessing to us. You know, the book of Ruth is the only book in the Bible that's named after one of Jesus's ancestors. Also, it's one of only 2 books in the Bible that's named after a woman. Listen, God always, always takes care of his children. Thank you very much.